go stateside briefly now and talk to Greg Swenson, who's chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, about what the heck is going on in the US government. A very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia. Good to see you.
First of all, can we talk about this US government shutdown? It's the first time in 6 years this has happened. It used to be an annual thing for quite a while. Why has it happened, and what does it actually mean for ordinary Americans?
In the short term, it doesn't mean much for ordinary Americans because most of the government jobs that will be furloughed are relatively useless in the grand scheme of things.
So these sort of backroom jobs, but don't. I mean, and how long? Well, how long are they shut down for?
It's unpredictable. I think in the longest duration shutdown was the last one in 2018, or the end of 18, early 19. And that was, I think, 35 days. That was the record. But usually they end a lot sooner. This is a bit of gamesmanship on the part of the Democrats. I don't think it will work because really the Republicans have all the cards right now.
But in terms of how the government can be back up and running, I mean, people lose their pay when they're sent home. Yeah. A lot of these, ordinary working Americans. But there has been some threat from Donald Trump of basically sacking a load of these people.
Well, and that's what's interesting, Julie, and that's when I say the Republicans hold all the cards. I mean, they will not be blamed for this. Usually, the party who causes this is the party that rejects what's called a clean bill. So it's basically a bill that doesn't have any more additional law or spending in it, and that's what the Republicans have voted for. That's what they've presented here. So in the past, when Republicans have tried to shut down the government, like in 2013, it's because they tried to add language. They tried to add spending cuts that were not agreed upon prior to the negotiations. So that was a mistake. So this is the case this time around, and I think it will end relatively quickly, because if they keep it going too long, the Democrats, then they're going to lose those jobs permanently. And of course, the federal workforce is predominantly Democrats, so I don't think they want to risk that.
Indeed. Well, I mean, some jobs that could be lost permanently is people who get too fat while working for the Department of Defense in the Pentagon. An extraordinary meeting called together of the US military's highest-ranking officers by the US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth, who's been a fairly controversial figure since his appointment. He rallied more than 800 admirals and generals at the Marine Corps base Quantico in Virginia. He said to prepare for war, but he also said that he's going to oust fat generals from the Pentagon, and all staff are going to be weighed twice a year under his new look Department of War, and end to the bearded weirdos, trans soldiers and the like. I mean, how much further does this go, and what's the motivation?
Well, the motivation is clear. He just wants to bring, as he says repeatedly, he wants to bring lethality back to the military and stop with all this silliness, the DEI workshops, and as he said, dudes in dresses, which I thought was funny. I read the speech, but then I actually watched it on television. It was much better live because he is pretty animated. But I do think, it's a common sense revolution again. I mean, we've had 9 months of this, but it really is a common sense revolution. He's just bringing discipline back to the military and getting rid of all these silly experiments with social justice and climate fanaticism.
Well, I mean, we have had a lot of that in our own military here about, don't hire the best people to train as our top fighter jet pilots, because we've got too many white straight men. We need people of color, we need women, we need gay people, people who I don't even know what the queer thing is. Other than that, it's not very attractive. I mean, that's largely what it means, I think, people. But this is the thing. I mean, but there's a very big difference, isn't there, between expecting people to be fighting fit, and saying and then just being a bit bigoted about appearance. It's quite clear. He's very trim, pretty dashing man himself, expecting everyone to look like him. But why do all the generals need to be weighed in? I mean, there is an obesity crisis in America. There's no doubt at all about that. And I'm not sure you want a load of your soldiers to be wobbling along the battlefield. You need people who are able to carry their comrades out of harm's way if needed. But is this just sort of kind of fascism? Is this just sort of trans bashing, or is there a purpose to it?
Yeah, I don't think it's fat shaming gone wild here. I think look, obviously, if you're in combat positions, then you must be fit. I don't think that's new. That's not new at all. But I think what he's saying is he wants this to be part of the culture. I don't think the generals will be held to the same standards. I think it'll be adjusted for age. It'll be adjusted for height, obviously. So look, this is just a way of kind of rebranding the military, and that's why they went with the new name, Secretary of War, the War Department. not the Secretary of Defense. So, this is just part of the rebranding. I think it's great that, he's not going to have facial hair. He's not going to have, these overweight administrative types. So, look, this is just a return to the core basic principles of the greatest military, ever assembled.
Yeah. And first, this will work out in our favour in the West if the US military is up to scratch. I thought it was interesting also, he rather proudly used a phrase which you see a lot on the internet. The young people are using it. FAFO, F-A-F-O. I'm going to paraphrase. Let's go with mucked around, found out. He's basically talking about America reasserting itself. But at the same time, we've got a president who says he's not a president for war, he's a president for peace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, repeated it several times in the talk, and you hear it from the president all the time. The best way to avoid war is to prepare for war. So it's basically the peace through strength argument that goes back to the Reagan years. And they're deadly serious about this.
Okay.
And so, as you saw with Iran, they're not afraid to use military strength. We want to have the best equipment in the world. We have a long way to go, by the way, because I think we've fallen behind in the last, definitely the last 5 years, but I think even in the last few decades.
All right. So. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Well, how would you fancy a twice a year weigh-in at your workplace? Would you pass muster? Well, we'll talk about that with Claire Pearsall, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.